Good evening, friends, and welcome to the Cold War Prepper. This is Lee, and in case you can't tell, it's 102 degrees out there. So we are looking, that window, you're looking towards the west. So this is the setting sun here in Central Texas, and 102, and it did get up to 104 here today. It's going to be one of those weeks. It's going to be a scorcher all week. They're saying 102 tomorrow and then 104, 105 again on Thursday. But it's not unusual for us to have 70 days of 100 plus temperature here in Central Texas over the course of the summer. So nothing big. Hi, Clarity Jane. Welcome. So this evening, welcome. We are going to be reviewing the next couple pages of The Dark Secrets of SHTF Survival by Selco Begovic, his experiences in the Bosnian War. And, I think it's really, really important that we pay attention to people who have been there, done that, and that we learn what kept them alive and what can keep us alive in the same situation. I am kind of reading this as I go along. It's not one of those that I've read before and now we're reviewing it and reading it a second time. So I find it surprising. There are going to be a couple supportive statements of things that I have said in the past that I supposed, and now I'm finding is validated through Selco and his experience in Bosnia. So let me see. We got Clarity Jane, Jean Sin, welcome. And Diana too, welcome. Always good to see you. Linda Jurgen. Oh, fantastic. So happy that happened for you. Sheila Dean, welcome from Tennessee. You got the first two letters right. Although I will say, Dell sent me to Lebanon, Tennessee, and I opened our factory there. It took us 93 days from the day we acquired the property until the day we shipped our first notebook out of that facility in Lebanon, and then we moved it over to the airport so that we could use UPS as a primary shipper. And so we had a factory right there on the airport too, in Lebanon, Tennessee. Beautiful area. I really fell in love with it. We, as a matter of fact, I ate quite a bit at the original. Oh, what is that? Cracker Barrel. The original Cracker Barrel is right there by Lebanon, Tennessee. So Butch Graves, welcome from Colorado. That's where one of my favorite YouTubers is, Prepping by Faith. She's there in the Colorado area. Teresa Buchanan, welcome. And John Poole, welcome. One of my favorite people in the military was a major, very close to that, John Peel. And he was a special forces major. He was the one I went to Korea, did during the Olympics, attached to him, assigned to him, and what a great guy. I tell you what, I am not Special Forces qualified. I'm nowhere close to Special Forces qualified. I think the only Special Forces qualification I have is I can get the mud off their boots in preparation for somebody to spit shine them for them. Those guys are just phenomenal. I mean, their capabilities and skills and tactics are just, I'm envious. I don't know if I would have made that career decision to go that route to be a super soldier, but I'm very happy with what I did. But if it hadn't been for that, and if I were a little bit more than a weakling that I am, I probably would have gone that route, because it's always good to be surrounded by the super best. Let me share some good news with you now that we've got 19 people on. Wow, fantastic. CP, welcome. I hope you got your package today. And then let me see. I wanted to share with you some extremely good news. My gosh, somebody, I don't remember who. We had just interviewed Chris, Angry American, and somebody told me that I needed to get a hold of Franklin Horton and read his books. And so I've ordered, I wanted to read this one, The Mad Mick, because it just sounded like one of those names that you just say, wow, that's a book I got to read. But when I went to his website, found out he had a website, and I went to his website and it says, don't read Mad Mick until you've read volumes 1 and 2 of Locker 9, because Mad Mick is introduced in volume 2 of Locker 9. So I bought the 3 books. Volume 1 of Locker 9 is Locker 9. Book 2 is Grace Under Fire. And then I switched over to the Mad Mix series, and I'm now reading. So I started this yesterday. You can see I'm already halfway through. And so I went on his website and I sent him an email. I said, hey, Mr. Horton, so far I've interviewed Steve Smith from the Stonemont series, and I've interviewed Chris from Angry American, the Going Home series. Would really, really love to interview you as well. And I got a positive response from him today. So I have suggested a time and a date. He is on the East Coast. I want to respect his time. So when it does happen, if I get the date that I've requested for that one day, we're going to move the Monday night interview / discussion to 7 p.m. Central instead of 8 p.m. Central, so that I don't have him up until all hours of the evening, because I'm sure you all want to ask him all kinds of great questions. What a great set of books. As a matter, you can see I've already starting to tab. I've got my 5/8 card in there, taking notes and everything else. Helen has started reading this one book. Let me find my inhaler. We've got very ozone quality here. It's ozone hazard days and very bad air quality, and I'm just having a heck of a time breathing. Probably have to do another nebulizer treatment before I go to bed. Okay. So, but anyhow, phenomenal series. I love it. I love it. I love it. So far, I have not been disappointed with anybody. With Angry American, fantastic series. Steve Smith's Stonemont series, phenomenal. Pat Franklin Horton has 4 or 5 different series, each one 4 or 5 books long, that is just unbelievable. And so I've ordered 3 more of his books today. They should be getting here over the course of the next day or two, and then I'll start reading those and we'll get into those. Okay, so with all that introduction, let's get into the book review. So somebody told me that they got their book in the mail today and they were going to start reading it. This is phenomenal reading. I just tell you, I am totally impressed with. Oh, by the way, I ordered a bag of Defender coffee. I think I told you that last night. Made my first pot of it yesterday. Superior coffee. Don't know which one I ordered, but I'm very happy with it. Of course, I'm not too happy with $18 for 2 pounds of coffee, but I guess you get what you pay for, because this is phenomenal coffee. I'm not being paid anything to say that. I don't get anything if you buy it. You're going to have to go to the defendercoffee.com website yourself. I don't have any promo codes. I don't have any discount codes. I don't have anything. If you want it, that's great. It's great coffee. I switched away from the one I was drinking. As a matter of fact, I had a subscription to it, and they were sending me 2 pounds they're sending me 4 pounds a month. But they kind of came out the minute that Kyle Rittenhouse did his thing. They came out and condemned him before we knew all the facts. I don't like to condemn or to support until all the facts come out. That usually does not come out the first week that an incident happens. And because they were so quick in condemning him, I said, "Nah, you know what? That's kind of woke stuff, and you don't need my money that bad." So I'll switch coffee companies. So right now we're working on the reducing the 18 cans of Costco brand coffee that we have. So I'm down to where I only have about 12 cans left. Okay, in the book. So we're talking about page 47, and it starts off with, let me see here. In a violent urban survival scenario, the violence is the easy part. So he said, there really weren't that many happy gatherings, once this stuff happened. And he said that, he had a friend who was just a fearless guy. He would run into combat. He would do all kinds of things. But they had these weird mortar bomb attacks. And there was about a 6-second, you could hear the thump when it went up the tube. When they dropped the mortar round into the tube, it hits the bottom. You can hear that thump. That's the basically the charges exploding in the tube, and it sounds like a vacuum tube being pushed out. And you hear that, and then it takes about 6 seconds before the round impacts and explodes. He said that 6 seconds in between hearing the thump that that the mortar was being fired, and when it hit was probably the worst 6 seconds of anybody's life. And he said, and this really brave guy who would run into fire to direct fire, rifles and pistols and everything else, would poop and pee his pants in between the time that the thump and the explosion happened, and you never knew where they were going to happen. He said, just strange things happen. People can be a coward 1 second and a superhero the next, and vice versa. And people in austere conditions and combat conditions like that can be very different people. He says he swore that lasted 8 hours, not 8 seconds. There were so many things that went through your mind in that short period of time. Um, and he said, you gotta kind of determine ahead of time, kind of what are your breaking points, what are your red lines, what are the things you can and can't do. He said, sometimes when you kill the enemy, walking up to a body and just looking at it, that the same, people who would administer first aid to people with the most severe trauma could do that, and that has its own smell. Blood has its own smell, and people could go up and do first aid to the most severe trauma, but they couldn't be anywhere around somebody in a sick bed who had lost control of and defecated in the bed. They couldn't handle that smell, or they couldn't handling that or cleaning that up. I'm that way. We had I supplemented my income when I was a private first class attending. What was I attending? Oh no, I was a spec 5, attending my basic Russian class, and I was driving. Well, I drove ambulances both times, but basic Russian, I drove an ambulance part-time on Fridays and the weekends. And so Chris and I, who was another guy in my Russian language class, we had a transfer. So we had to go up to San Francisco, pick up a guy who was being treated for cancer, and bring him down to Carmel Community Hospital. So we went up to get him. We're driving down. Chris was in the back. I was driving, and the guy had a bowel movement. And we had every fan on in the van. We had windows open. At one point, we just had to pull over to the side. And this is one of those Chevy Van 30s. So we had to open the side door, open the rear drawer, try to get things cleared out as far as odor and everything else. And the guy said, well, aren't you going to clean me? And Chris said, no way. We've got 15 minutes and you're at Carmel Community Hospital and they can take care of that. That's not in my job description. And so neither one of us wanted to clean this guy up after him having, we put the pan under him, but that was the extent of what we were going to do. Both of us got fired because of that, because we didn't take good care of our patient in the back of the ambulance. And, so I can see where Selco is coming from. There are just certain smells that turn people off that you can't handle. There are certain sights, certain things. I can pick up dog poop. I can clean up dog pee, and that doesn't bother me. But for a human being, it does bother me. So I can see where he's coming from. You have to kind of, where are your limits now? I am impressed with mothers and the amount that they do changing diapers and taking care of kids and everything else. And just, I think that's probably, they probably have olfactory conditions quite different from us guys. Whereas we get nauseated, they can handle it extremely well. That's a very general statement. So, I think maybe that's why they're better suited for nurses than I am. Don't expect to overcome all of your anxieties, to overcome all your limitations. Just find out how you're going to handle that and how you're going to live with it. Especially if you're going to be having any sort of a sick room in your home. So he says, why many preppers will die. So I want to read you a couple paragraphs. He says, how many times have you or some prepper built or formed an opinion without even checking it? Kind of like what we talked about last night. There are a lot of people who think they know what an EAM is. They think they know that there's exceptions to it, or length or variety or frequency or anything else, and that means something. And or there's all kinds of things that we get told by other people that we don't test. We don't say, wait a minute, Does that sound right? I need to investigate this. I need to find out more about it. And so because of that, because you're taking other people's quote expertise and not doing your own research, a lot of people are going to be listening to bad advice and they're going to die. How many times have you bought an item and stored it just because you think or somebody it makes sense, or because somebody or that you listen to or watch on YouTube? Um, I'm paraphrasing there. Said it makes sense. You checked it out and you bought it. Well, I'm kind of that way with knives. There used to be a channel on here. Oh gosh, maybe 3-4 years ago, before the pandemic. Guy he Prepared Mind 101. I forget his name, but he ended up designing knives eventually for Schrade, and then Schrade got bought out by Smith and Wesson, and he quit. But I think his best friend died, and that caused a lot of anxiety for him. I haven't seen him since. Been 3 or 4 years, but every time he recommended a knife, I bought it. And I've got all kinds of unused, untested, whatever knives, almost $1,000 worth of knives sitting back there in the back room that had never been used. So I fell prey to that. I think other people are going to fell prey to it. Think of what if I had one good knife that I'd really tested, I do. I have a couple of them. I really, really love my bushcraft. I'm sorry, my Pathfinder, Habilis Pathfinder knife. Great knife. I have now I'm going to forget the name of it. I'll show it to you next time. It's a Bushcraft 2. Fantastic knife. I have an Essie. As a matter of fact, I cut my finger trying to get it out of the scabbard the first time I pulled it out. And that's a fantastic knife. I have so many fantastic knives. It's hard to choose which one I'm going to put on which backpack or which gear or anything else. I have a Becker BK2, heavy. Becker BK7, heavy. I'm not sure I'd want to carry either of those in a combat situation, or in a bug out situation. But that's something that he's talking about me. There are people out there. You just get into this thing where you want the latest and greatest, and you don't try anything out, and you don't get it taken care of. Thank you, Clarity Jane. I appreciate that. Yeah, we do an awful lot in the ambulance before we ever get to the hospital. We do an awful lot of cleaning up, getting a lot of the mud, the debris, stopping a lot of the blood flow before we get there. But now you have to have EMT or paramedic certification to be an ambulance attendant. Back then, all you needed, when I did it, all I had was advanced first aid. That's all we had. And then, as a matter of fact, it was while I was in advanced Russian class in 1977 that California started the EMT program. So he says it's often easier. It's an easier way to believe others than to try everything for yourself. And then he says, so he bought he says, we're going to buy a bug out bag because somebody said it's the best bug out bag there is, usually without checking out who the guy is who said it. And does he have any authority to say that? If most preppers look at their storage, they can find items they know the theory of using, but have never touched, used, or opened up. And I find that extremely true too. I've got a Baofeng and a Yaesu back in the back. They have to be programmed. It looks extremely complicated. I am scared to death of technology. Oh, by the way, you know how I got this camera rehooked up, because last night I didn't have one. The computer could not find a camera at all. So I just said, you know what? When all else fails, reboot. So I rebooted my computer, and guess what? Camera automatically reappeared. So my solution for technology is reboot. Okay. Shenanigans, welcome. Cloud Artiga, welcome. Yes, I do too. As a matter of fact, I keep that here in my everyday bag. Let me see if I can reach it. Yeah, there it is. So my EDCE has the K-Bar USMC knife. So, yep, I agree. That's a fantastic knife. That one has been used, by the way, quite a bit. So he's talking about bartering. He's talking about buying and everything else. And so this one guy had several restaurants, and he was kind of a front for a black market. For he was laundering money. He was into prostitution, drugs, all kinds of different things. And so at the end, people were forcing him to sell his businesses to him. And Selco asked him, why did you sell your businesses to him? And he said, every time they asked, they were stronger than I was, and I simply had to give in. And that's basically what's going to happen in an SHTF environment. Somebody who is stronger than we are, who has the draw on us or whatever, can ask us to do almost anything, and we're going to comply if we want to live. Let's see. Well, at least we've got some common knowledge there, Triple G. Absolutely. So now the next part is what we ate and how we ate it, and how we got food. So in the beginning period, the SHTF events unfolded at a very fast pace. Actually, events go one after another so fast that if you find yourself lost in one event at the end of several events, you ask yourself, why in the name of God did I not go out and buy a whole bunch of food while I could still do that? And I think that's a hint for those of us now who know that SHTF is coming. We don't know what the SHTF is. We aren't sure when. I just have this gut feeling it'll be before the end of summer. But the one thing we need to get right now is food. And Selco concentrates on that. I concentrate on that. I say, if nothing else, make sure you have plenty of food. So Little Known Prepper says, had terminal arterial sclerosis. Oh no, he had cirrhosis of the liver. Oh wow. Yeah. Yep. And the bad thing is it stays in the transport vehicle too. That guy that we transported from San Francisco down to Carmel, we basically took that ambulance out of service for 3 days while we deodorized it. That was unbelievable. The Marachnif Garberg is hard to beat. I don't have the Mora Marburg. I've heard it's a fantastic knife. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's the only full tang Mora knife that there is. I have the Mora Black, and that has a 90-degree spine. Great knife. Actually, that's the one I put on my wife's bag. And we're going to get into bug up bags here in just a minute. He talks about gardening being difficult, and he says, they wish that they had started gardening earlier. And the one thing he said was, a lot of people had yards, and they were going to get their yards ready. But converting your yard from grass to gardening is a very labor intensive, and you need a lot of other things, soil amendments and everything else. And you need to plan for that ahead of time. He says, so yes, gardening was an option, and people used every part of their available land, but that was not enough to feed their family. And it was like you are checking every day how your tomato's growing, and you wait for it. But then when you pick it, you realize that you only have food for a couple of days. We weren't prepared at that time to use every piece of land for food growing, and it takes time to establish that land. So, I think that's one of the things we need to think of now. So as a result of this, I went to Home Depot and picked up 4 bags of garden soil. And so, I've got 4 bags. They're just going to be out here on the back porch, so that if I need to start gardening in the backyard, at least I've got something that I can use as a beginning for a raised platform bed or something like that to replace my grass in an SHTF environment. Okay, so Triple G says, yes, the Mora Marburg is full tang. It starts fires, cut things, acts as a chef knife in the field. It's the only sheath knife he carries anymore. I'm trying to think. LT Wright, there we go. The knife that I have that is my love of my life is my LT Wright Genesis 2, and with a Scandi grind. And oh my God, what a nice knife! Now, don't tell my wife that I spent $220 on a knife, but I did for the LT Wright Genesis. Now, I will tell you, it's a different steel. It's not, so the LT Wright is $10.95, and I bought it's from El Salvador, San Salvador. Starts with a C, but anyhow, they have there's a knife company down in Central America. Looks like an LT Wright Genesis, acts like an LT Wright Genesis. It has the same grind. It has a Scandi grind. It's a wonderful knife. Has the same broom handle on it, and Condor Bushcraft is the knife, and it's about $50. You know what? That's the one I use around the house all the time. As much as I love my LT Wright Genesis, I will tell you that except for the quality of the steel, the difference between the $220 LT Wright and the $50 Condor is barely perceptible. So which one do I use the most? The $50 one, the Condor. And it's a great knife. So he says that they survived because of MREs, that evidently the United Nations was filling up aircraft full of MREs in Italy, flying them over and then paradropping them into some of the war-torn areas of Bosnia, and that's how he lived. Yes, yeah, oh, that's it, Condor Bushcraft. Yes, I did, and just a wonderful knife. It's a great little knife. So, and here's the secret, little on prepper. There's a guy, Eric, and his channel is Epic Gardening. He lives, I believe, in San Diego. And oh man, I tell you what, I wish I could garden like he does. He teaches. When I want to learn about gardening, I watch Eric, and then I try to duplicate what he's doing. And but he grew a 20 by 40 patch of wheat in his backyard. And when he processed the wheat and ground the flour and everything else, he had just enough flour to make just over one loaf of bread. So 20 by 40 foot patch of wheat in his backyard produced one loaf of bread. So if you want one loaf of bread, per day or per week, now you're going to have 52 of at least 52 for one a week of those 20 by 40 patches. And so that kind of gives you the idea of how much you have to grow in order to eat and on a regular basis at your home. But he says they dropped MREs, and MREs became the barterable item. Hello, ABC Patriot, and welcome. Oh, I am so jealous. You've got so much. You're so far ahead of me. I've got like 3, 6. I've got 9 10-gallon grow bags in the backyard. I've got a box that I have my garlic in. I've got, let me see, potatoes, and then the blackberries, the blueberries, my strawberries. I haven't planted those yet. The raspberries died. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tomato plants. I've got 1 bell pepper and 1 sweet pepper. And then I've got squash, zucchini, and okra. And but when you can all that, you might live maybe 3 weeks for 2 people. So that's kind of yes. And another thing, Mitch, is Mitch J, is what I have read. I have not yet experimented, but they say to make sure you do what they call the Indian sisters, the 3 sisters. And so the Indians, the Native Americans, would plant corn with pole beans and squash. And so each one draws a different nutrient from the soil and replaces a different nutrients of the soil, so that the 3 of them basically provide the nutrients for each other. And of course, as the corn stalk grows, the beanstalk grows up on the corn stalk, and then the squash provides ground cover. So they say that's actually one of the best crops to have, is the 3 sisters. Hello, Camper Van Clark. Welcome. Oh, wow. Thank you for letting us know that. I have not tried acorn flour. And as a matter of fact, one of the things on my list, I was going to go today, but my next door neighbor has invited another one of her friends to join our little group. And so I wanted to take them both to the LDS store. And we were going to do that Saturday, but her friend couldn't make it. And I forgot to tell her that I wanted to go this afternoon. But I've got sick dogs, and so we finally found out that what's causing one of them to be sick, it was the urine analysis and the blood test. She's got a urinary tract infection. So, but I had 3 dogs throwing up and pooping and everything else here in the house, and it's been crazy. So I'm glad we didn't go this afternoon. We'll catch it Saturday morning, but I do want to get the 2 of them going there, and do want to get 2 more cans of flour. So yeah, thank you for reminding me. Um, oh, I believe it. Oh, I believe it. And so one of the things we do here is when we make our coffee, we save the grounds, we dry the grounds, and then we use the grounds to help acidify the soil. So especially for the blueberries, because blueberries like acidic soil, and so we use the acid from the coffee grounds, and that also we try to let it dry out a little bit so that it begins the decomposition. So it turns into a compost, and that way, because if not, then it becomes a kind of like a sieve where it holds water above the soil instead of letting it emulsify. So I try to get it to where it's a little bit starting to compost before I actually add it to the soil. Um, oh wow, that's great. When I lived in Arizona, I built a structured rock series because we had the backyard fence was 8 feet higher, the ground level of it, than the actual floor of our backyard. And so I built this terrace, 4 different levels, uh, put in rocks and bricks, and then backfilled with dirt, and then all of that became strawberries. Golly, did strawberries grow great in that Arizona clay soil? It was just unbelievable. I could not. I had to give them away. There were just so many. Let's talk about foraging and oh wait. So let me see. So you're talking about the food drops and how that became a source of barter. Foraging and hunting are overestimated, especially in urban and suburban areas. When it comes to foraging for plants, the popular opinion in some city circles is that you can survive and live by foraging, not what he found. Um, and in the city and in the suburban areas, hunting and trapping anything becomes far more complicated than a pigeon, which was really an option. The only reason was that it was in the city in the middle of a war, so real trapping had its own complications, like shelling, constant noises, similar booby traps, and everything else. So you go out, you set a trap, is what he's saying, and then somebody sets a booby trap next to it. So you go check on your trap, and the booby trap goes off. Or, foraging and trapping and hunting in a war torn area is not really that easy. Um, then he talks about house scavenging, and I wrote a note here. That you can see my little note there. The one thing that got me with his discussion of house scavenging was by hunkering down, you become a target for other people to come steal from you. So make sure you have good defensive plans for your home. Make sure you have the capability to defend your home. So, I want you to be aware of that ahead of time, that people are going to come looking for leftover cans of tuna or leftover cans of peas or whatever the case might be. And unless you make it look like your home has already been scavenged, with stuff strewn in the front yard, make it look like they came in and just emptied your house, and you're very well defended, they're going to come looking to see what they can find inside your house. Scrapper's talking about, I'm sure the turning your backyard into a garden does not come in 1 year. Oh, wow. Okay, great channels to add. Thank you. Hello, Dragon Slayer. Welcome. Little Known Prepper says, okay, she's just under 5 feet, about 107. Family nearby, Schnuffle Red Hen. The only one prepping. Oh, I gotcha. Here's a terrible secret. When I got drafted, I was 6'1" and weighed 155. I was a skinny rail. Went in basic training, and between the exercise and the food, I left basic training 8 weeks later, 180 and 6'1". So I had 34 trousers almost all of my life until I retired from the Army. And then I still have that same number, 68, but it's changed. Instead of 34, now I wear 38, 30. So I've shrunk 2 inches, 2 to 4 inches. I'm now, my last doctor's appointment, I was 5'11" instead of 6'1". And yeah, 38-inch belt, and even that's starting to feel tight. So I need to get more exercises. But we went to the gym. Helen and I went to the gym for an hour today. So we'll go back tomorrow for another hour tomorrow. Lisa Marie Smith, welcome. The way he puts his timeline, it goes like this. First, people riot on stores and looked for valuable things like gold, money, television, stereos, cars. Then later, as it progressed, they realized the situation and they started looking for weapons, fuel, candles, battery, and food. And then they dig up some gardens for a few potatoes. So if you have a garden, then you're going to become a target for people to steal from, because they will be that desperate. People will do desperate things in desperate times to eat. So if they know you have a garden, they're going to do whatever they can to get that food, especially if they know you have it. So Selco kind of defines this timeline, and I think we need to pay attention to that timeline. So if they are looking for things like batteries, gold, alcohol, tobacco, and they're not concentrating that much on food to start with, maybe the place we need to start are the academies and the Bass Pro Shops, and maybe the dollar stores and things like that, where people aren't going because they don't want the big ticket items. And he said the majority of people could not have imagined what was really coming in the long term. So they couldn't fathom that a bag full of AA batteries was worth far more than 50 washing machines, laundry washing machines. And so he was talking about how you can take batteries and those would, for people's flashlights, because they didn't have any electricity. In his other book, he talks about even after 6 months, people were so accustomed to not having light that even candles and batteries, flashlights, had lost their value because people became accustomed to not having light at night. So there's a definite timeline of how things progress. This is one where I was very happy that he said this, because remember, one of the things I constantly say is I believe in a post-SHTF environment, the majority of our foods are going to be soups, stews, casseroles, and chowders. And so what he says here is we ate an awful lot of soups. For example, if we had a small amount of meat and rice, but we had water and some plants, we could make a big pot of soup. And I think that's probably going to be the best rationale of what's going to happen. If you look at I watched the video on a Viking. We have our frontier type stuff here in the U.S. They have Viking type channels like that over in Norway, and in Denmark they have on an island they have an actual Viking thing, and they cook the way the Vikings did, and that was all stews and soups. If you take a look at Townsend and Sons, he's into 17th and 18th century cooking in the U.S. And so they're going to have awful lot of braised stuff and an awful lot of stews, soups, baked beans, and things like that. So I think that's probably what we're going to be going back to as far as foods when we get to this point. So we ate food that was not nasty or good, but it kept us alive. And so I wrote a note here and I said, there's a lot of people who talk about food boredom and you need a lot of food variety. And what Selco is telling us here is you don't care about taste. What you care about is filling your stomach. And that becomes the number one paramount thing. As a matter of fact, a couple sentences later, he says, it was brought down to the level of getting your stomach full of something so you can continue to operate for just one more day. So I think that's really critical that we understand. We're trying to think of where we are right now, that we want something that's going to be tasty, that we're focusing on taste and variety. And in reality, I think maybe the Mormons have it right. They only have like 18, 24 different things that are in their pantry, and those are the basics you're going to need: carrots, onions, flour, rice, sugar, macaroni, spaghetti, pinto beans, um, navy beans, black beans, milk. I mean, they've got it down to the real basics. And can you live off of that for several years? Absolutely. Are you going to get bored with the food? Absolutely. But will it keep you alive? That's what's important. And I think we need to pay attention to that. That's going to be what happens. Um, Dragon Slayer has the Lee syndrome. Shortening and widening. Um, yeah, and that's what I have. I have like 8 10-gallon pots that I can move around. Let's see what it says here. I'm just thankful that I'm still able to get around okay. I have so many friends and family members that are having physical disabilities, so I know I have to help them. Yes, and that's like, I know now it's 70, and I'm in 2 months I'll be 71. I'm not going to bug out. If I do, I've got my bug out bag zip tied to a 2-wheel dolly. Those dollies you can get at Walmart to move boxes and stuff like that. Well, I realize my limitations. I'm not going to carry a 45-pound pack anywhere. Neither is Helen. So we bought 2 of those 2-wheel dollies, and we've got our bug out bags zip locked to them. And then if we have to bug out, we throw the dolly in the back of the pickup. And when the pickup runs out of gas or whatever, then we can pull the dollies. And that's just how it's got to be. We cannot do the same thing as we used to do 40, 50 years ago. That's all there is to it. But thank God we're still here. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a friend today, the exercise. And so when I was at Field Station Augsburg, Lafervite was only, that 80, gosh, when did Lafervite started? Lafervite started January of 76, and then it closed down in 89. So it only existed for 13 years. And you had 20 positions per bay, 2 bays, 40 positions, 4 shifts, 160 linguists there for a 3-year tour. So let's say maybe there were 1,000 of us who served there over the course of its tenure. So we have a Facebook group of all of us, and and then we have one guy who puts out every year in October a memorial to people who passed away the preceding year. This last year's memorial, giving everybody 15 seconds, was almost an hour long. And I was sitting there kind of morose and crying a little bit over all the friends that I've lost. And Helen put her arms around me and said, yeah, but the important thing is you're still here. And I think, sometimes we get lost in that we have to remember that we're still here. And that's the good news. Maybe not as in the same shape we were 50 years ago, but we're still here. We're still kicking. That's the important thing. Yes. Now, one of the things that I'm beginning to learn is be careful how much you tell the kids. In the second book of Franklin Horton's series, um, Grace Under Fire, they experienced some major problems because a son, his mother's a drug addict, and the drug addict doesn't want to take care of her son, so the drug addict gives her son to her mother. So the grandmother is taking care of the grandson. SHTF happens. The grandmother feels sorry, takes some food to the daughter, trying to take care of her. Daughter kind of gets information on where the food came from, where they're staying, how things are, and then they use that information to basically take over the compound with all the druggies. And so, be careful what you tell young ones, and because you never know who they're going to share it with. You can't trust them to keep a secret. You can barely trust adults to keep a secret. Dragon Slayer. And the Going Home series is all in Central Florida. So from the sounds of what he says, with the exception of hurricanes, that should be a pretty good area. There's all kinds of great natural stuff there for you to help you survive. So read A. American's books. We'll be doing his book, I believe 8 is what we're doing this coming Thursday, day after tomorrow, Home Invasion. So we're going to be doing Home Invasion. I believe it is Thursday. So join us for that. Let me see here. Fat fingers, hardtack, yeah. Uh, Cream soap. I have to be careful. So I guess pretty much anything. I'm allergic to formoterol and formaldehyde, so you can't embalm me when I die. It's a terrible joke. Uh, I'll break out, But anyhow, so I have a list of things I can't use or I can use. I have a list of only those things that they're approved that I can use. So for example, I can use soft soap, lavender, and honey. I believe it is, but and then there's only one or two types of laundry detergent we can use for my clothes. So it gets kind of difficult when you're allergic to a lot of different things, and that's only happened here in the recent past that I've become allergic to those. Um, yes, and of course, getting the oil. You can get the oil at Walmart, by the way. Uh, but tin kerosene. Don't get the kerosene lanterns at Walmart. However, I understand that they're plastic. I have heard they are plastic and they are prone to leaking. So I don't know. That's what I've heard. My first experience with a kerosene lamp, I was probably 8 years old. I went up to my grandmother's. My grandmother lived in a house that did not have electricity, had an outhouse, had a hand pump, water pump in the kitchen. And for light, we had a kerosene lantern. So we just finished a game of Parcheesi. And she said, "Why don't you blow out the kerosene lamp and we'll go to bed?" And I reached up and grabbed the glass globe, thinking he had lifted off in order to blow out the flame, and got real bad second-degree burns on my hand just from the heat of that lamp. I learned my lesson about how to turn off a lamp very, very quickly. Um, but we're still here, Lisa Marie. We're still here. Yeah. So in 1971, when I was a private first class married, I made $123.50 a month. That was and then I got $42 for quarters. No, I got $42 for no, $23 for separate rations because I wasn't eating in the mess hall. They gave me money to eat food. So I had 123.50 plus 23, plus they gave $60 a month to my wife for quarters, what they call quarters loans. And then but actually they gave her $100. They took $40 out of my paycheck, added it to $60 that they gave for quarters allowance, and then mailed her $100 check. So that's how they did that back then. And so I was basically making right around 212, 215 bucks a month in 1971. And our rent for an efficiency apartment where we shared the bathroom with three other families was 105 a month. So it was, yeah, back in the 70s, it was tough, quite different from where we are now. Absolutely, yeah. The clamp lids are great. I have a lot of them. I use those primarily for pasta, and throw a desiccant in there, and I also throw in an oxygen absorber. And as long as the oxygen absorber sucks in that gasket, you're good to go. Let me see. We had a power outage last winter. The only thing during the only cold snap and the lamps. Yes, and then I like that Vesta space heater, the Vesta heater that you use the chafing fuel on. That worked real well for us during the Snowmageddon version 2 this last winter. Strongly recommend that. As a matter of fact, I took it to our Tuesday morning men's meeting breakfast and showed it off, and I think I sold 4 of them there at the men's meeting. um, yeah, I think that may be what it comes down to. Oh wow, that's a great idea. Thank you, Claude. Thank you for sharing that, Claude. Leave that up for a while. Uh, where are we? So, Little on prep, or Dragon Slayer says she mainly cooks one-pot meals for her folks. It's easier to eat. Last night they had stuffed flounder, and that's unusual. Yeah, I one-pot meals are great. You can also, so there is a book. There's a woman who put out A Meal in a Jar is the name of the book. And she took a lot of freeze-dried foods, especially Thrive Life foods, and mixed them into jars. And then then all she has to do is pour that out, add that amount of water, the amount that's marked on the jar, and she has basically a dinner that way. So you can also do it that way. I don't do that simply because I would have to break the integrity of the seal. So as it stands right now, most of my freeze-dried foods have a 25 to 30-year shelf life. If I open that, even though I'm going to repackage it into another sealed container, I'm not sure if that temporary exposure to the air doesn't destroy that 25 to 30-year shelf life. So I haven't done that simply for that reason. Okay, back to the book. There was a black market for food. There was a thriving black market for food, and it was a matter that changed all the time based on what was available in the city at any given moment. And he said the one thing you have to be careful of was that the people who organized the markets had strong organization, firepower, connections, etc. Sometimes they dictated the pricing of food in the city, and sometimes there were common folks who offered you a few cans of meat or two MREs from their stash in exchange for something. But things to know about eating and bartering. Acquiring food in urban settings comes down to the idea of taking food from other people, whether they are there anymore. So that's that rummaging through their houses or stealing it from them, and you have to attack them. However, realize that anytime you plan on attacking somebody else, they're going to try to defend themselves. So you've just increased the chances of you being hurt when you start attacking other people. So the best thing is not to do that. So he says, by attacking other people to get food, if you find yourself so desperate, or if you choose to go that way, what you are risking, of course, is your life. And so that's kind of where we are as far as everything we wanted to discuss in his book for this evening. We can go back to the chat, and then I'll tell you about the new Bible verse that I'm going to use as my motto. So Claude says he has one, goes about 30 miles a day. Here's the issue. And as a matter of fact, so I was watching Survival Prepper today, and he was doing a video response to a video from Warrior Poet. And Warrior Poet put out a video. He says, I've got a bug out bag. I'm just not going to, I don't plan on using it. It's there in case I emergency. It's not something I want to do. Why would I want to leave my home that I know? Like, for example, here at my house, I have the rainwater catchment system so that I have water. I have the solar system, so I have power. I have my food. I have my armory. I have everything I need right here, except for wild game and gardening. And so why would I leave that? And that's his thing as well. So, I've kind of defocused the bugging out, and I've kind of refocused on how can I make it as good as I am here. As a matter of fact, I forwarded a video from Southern Prepper 1 on communications. And that's something I've got to talk to Kelly about is, what kind of a radio are we going to use for our community here for all of our neighbors so that we can talk to each other? And I was thinking about ordering 10 of these radios that Southern Prepper 1 recommended, and I was going to get a separate charging station for each one. And I thought, wait a minute, Kelly and I are the only two people on the block that have solar with battery backup. So we're the only two that can charge the radios anyway. So that means that I can go ahead and get the 10 radio system with one charging station, and then people will trade out. So I can get, have 5 people, me plus 4, with radios, and I'm issuing them on a daily basis. So they use that for a day, bring it back, I'll recharge it and give them a new one. And that way I've got, 5 radios that are in use and 5 that are charging all the time. But why would I give that up and go out and become basically a refugee? So let me see, 30 miles would give me a heart attack. So Dragon Slayer, I wholeheartedly agree. I just Helen and I have both had total hip replacements, and that's the reason we're exercising when we are. Get our hips back in shape, get those muscles. As a matter of fact, as a result of my total hip replacement, I also have a torn abductor in my right side. So I can bend over okay. I just can't stand back up. I've got to use my arms and a cane to get back up if I bend over to do anything. To get down on the floor, to clean up dog accidents, I have to basically sit on the floor next to it and wipe it. I can't kneel down or kneel over and do it. So I have to squat down and then sit down on the floor and move over next to it. So, yeah, mobility issues when you're our age become significant. And so, how are we going to work around that? Uh, and there's a German channel called Schnell Lecker, Schnelllecker. I have been watching them for about a year. They put out a new video every week, and I was telling Helen, that Hungarian goulash, German goulash, Austrian goulash, you change one ingredient. I mean, so watching her cook and watching her husband cook over the course of the last year, I'm going to say that basically they started out with one recipe. They change one item a week, and it's something different. But it's always a stew, a soup, or a casserole. And but that I wholeheartedly agree. I think one pot is going to be the way we go. You're not going to have too much to clean. So you're trying to clean that. Oh, speaking of which, we got them out so we could use them to feed the girls because the vet said to give them rice and chicken and rice. So we've got some canned chicken that I got in 2015. That's what we're using for the girls for their rice and chicken. But I tell you that I go to Costco and Sam's and I buy the 4-pound boats. So you get 1,000 of these. So this is the boat. Okay. This is a little cardboard tray, if you will. So this is what we're going to be using for our soups, stews, meats, our plates, everything else, totally disposable. You don't have to wash it. So when I talk about boats, that's what I'm talking about as far as what we'll be using for all our eating needs afterwards. Clarity Jane, you're absolutely right. So my mother is a product of the Great Depression. So what I eat as a child is basically what she cooked in the Great Depression. I bought this book. I'm about ready to finish it up, hoping that I would get all kinds of great recipes. And it's more about the politics of the Great Depression and all the different organizations that were formed um, to get uh, basically, the Great Depression is what started interest in vitamins and how many calories you needed and what you needed as far as carbs and everything else. And so this talks about the politics behind it and establishing the different agencies and how they came up with all the formulas of all the different things and determine what people needed. And they did it just in time for World War II, so we could feed our troops. But World War I, our soldiers were overfed by a margin of 100% over what most of the other European soldiers ate in World War I. But this talks about how they got into it. And right, the part that I'm reading right now, they're talking about the Grapes of Wrath and John Steinbeck and the family that he followed to write that story and how that became a national symbol. It also talks about the woman that they took a picture of outside of her tent, and she had 7 children. That was with her second husband. They were picking peas in Naromi or something like that, California. The freeze came, froze the peas. They couldn't pick them. So they were without food, without gas, without anything. And they finally got their car fixed or their truck fixed, and they moved on to someplace else. But they found her after World War II, and they interviewed her. And at that time, she was on her third husband and had 10 children. So, but she was living well. And the thing is, they use that picture to promote food stamps and helping people and government handouts of food and everything else. She says that during the entire 13 years, plus the 4 years of World War II, she never received a penny or a piece of food from a government program. And she survived with 10 children. So that says something. Let me see. Oh, yeah. I think that seeing my grandmother and living, with an outhouse and no electricity and no running water and everything else was kind of good too. Um, yeah, let's talk about that together, Triple G, because I'd like to stay in contact with you and how we can do that. Um, okay, so here's one. He's got another good question here. I place. Wait a minute. Let me get to Karen. Karen, welcome. In a huge baggie, and over time, I'll make a big patch of soup or stew. That's a great idea. Great idea. Thank you for sharing that. Hmm. Here is Triple G Farms has a question. Have you ever used dehydrated scrambled eggs at home? Yes. Now here's the secret. So there are two different types of eggs that you want to do. I've had Mountain House. I've had Thrive Life, which is good. I really like Thrive Life's this one here. This one here, the Homestyle Scramble. Come on, light. There we go. The Homestyle Scramble. So this is kind of I do what's called Bauernfrühstück, and we do that every Christmas morning. So it's a German breakfast, but it's basically scrambled eggs with hash browns, bell peppers, onions, sausage, bacon, everything in all one big pan. Okay, that's what that's homestead or that homestyle scramble is. It doesn't have the meat. You can add meat. So a little can of the diced ham that you can get at Walmart or HEB that goes well in that. The scrambled eggs that they have are fantastic. I've had Thrive Life scrambled eggs. I've had Nutrient Survivals. Let me see what else. Homestyle scramble, Mountain House. I've had Mountain Houses. They're pretty good. What you have to understand is you need two different kinds of eggs. Okay. One is just go ahead and get the scrambled eggs. And the ones that I like the best taste so far, are unfortunately the most expensive, and those come from Nutrient Survival. Now, they're also the easiest. They're pre cooked. So all you have to do is mix them with the water, let them steep, and they kind of come together. Whereas with Thrive Life, which is the second best tasting, you mix it, then you have to cook it in a fry pan. Now, if you want to use your scrambled eggs to make something, so you're going to make a souffle or whatever, you can't use the scrambled eggs. You have to use what's called whole eggs. And so I have a couple cans of whole eggs as well. You can get whole eggs for baking, for cooking, other than scrambled eggs from Algerson Farms on Amazon. And so I would look for that there. But you want to make sure you have the difference between the two, the scrambled eggs and the whole eggs. So let me see. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Teresa. Thank you. That's a very good point I hadn't considered. Thank you for bringing that up. So maybe what I should do is go ahead and get the one that has 10 radios and 10 separate charging stations, and then just get a plug-in strip so that I can have five of them charging at any one time and five in use, and then the other five charging stations become backups if anything. Thank you, Teresa. You just solved the problem. I don't think I'll forget that. Thank you. Great idea. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Hi, Pat. Welcome. Welcome. Yeah, and gosh, when I was there, that was the in 1974 for basic rushes when we had the gasoline lines and everything else. That was the real bad gas problem, and oh my gosh. So I was there. I got married halfway through my basic Indonesian class in 1971. I got married in July of 71. Then I went back for basic Russian in 1974. Got divorced in 76, and then went back for intermediate Russian in 77. So 3 different one-year tours, quite different experiences. When I was there in '77, I was a staff sergeant and making a little bit better money. I had a nice camper and I was able to go camping every weekend. My friend Danny Wells, who has the same birthday I do, he's 1 year older than I am. He's actually from California. We used to go up to Santa Cruz every weekend. God, I lived off of Jack in the Box 2 for 99 cent tacos for I can't tell you how many weekends. But and their egg rolls. They also have some of the best egg rolls. And matter of fact, I have 2 egg rolls left over here in the refrigerator. I stopped by the other day and got some tacos and egg rolls. Let me see where we are here. Well, I can do that. I can do that. That's not a problem. But it is going to mostly be politics. I will tell you that. And I am totally ashamed of the way that it was handled by different people and different parties. And people can be obstinate and obnoxious just for the sake of being obstinate and obnoxious, and just because the other party wants to do something, they think it's wrong. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. Sometimes the other party, whichever side of the aisle you're on, the other party does come up with good ideas. And if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. Support it, endorse it, support it, get behind it. Let everybody profit. Take care of the people. If it's a bad idea, condemn it. But don't condemn something just because the other side comes up with it. That's not the way to be. We need to be a little bit more practical in the way we do things. We need to come to consensus on things. We need to find the middle ground. We need to find out what's best for the country. And when I look at how divided the country was during the solutions, trying to find solutions for the Great Depression, I'm just really thoroughly embarrassed. Let me see here. Family farm in Kansas. Oh, wow. We had wild turkey here just roaming through just the other day. Unbelievable. Let me see where we are. Triple G, thank you for the donation. Uh, greatly appreciate it. Let me see where we are here. Now you can use dehydrators for fruit. Make sure the thinner you slice anything, whether it be meat, fruit, or vegetables, the quicker and more thoroughly it's going to dehydrate. The thicker you have it, the longer it's going to take to dehydrate and the more mushy it's going to be as a result. Yeah, I wish I could afford a freeze dryer as well, Dragon Slayer. But the other problem is I don't know where I'd put it in this house. We went from 3,700 square feet down to just over 1,500, I believe it is. And I mean, I gave a lot of stuff away. I sold a lot of stuff. I was working at the homeless shelter at the time as the HR director. Had a master's in science. We start them out as counselors at $30,000 a year, and so she had just gotten married. So we sold her our entire living room set and one of our bedroom sets at rock bottom prices just to get rid of it. And still trying to get rid of stuff. We can't get either car in the garage, so I still need more stuff to get rid of. So trying to find space for anything right now is difficult. Okay, so I do want to share with you before we shut down my new verse that I'm going to use as my motto, and that's Joshua 1:9. So what has happened is we've gone through the 40 years of the Sinai Peninsula, getting ready to go into the Promised Land. We're on the banks, and we're getting ready to cross into the Promised Land. And Aaron has died, Moses has died, and so now the people, the new generation is getting ready to go into the Promised Land. So Joshua is, for all intents and purposes, the new leader. Hello, Scott. We're just about to wrap it up. Hello, David Lynn. Welcome. So we're just about wrapping it up, but so we're talking about Moses and we're getting Joshua. So Aaron, Moses, and Aaron have died. Most of that. My personal opinion, the real reason that they wandered around the desert for 40 years when it's only a 9-day walk so that the generation who had been slaves could die off, and only free men would enter into the promised land. That's my personal belief, for what it's worth. So they're getting ready to cross the River Jordan. They're about ready to go into the promised land. And here's what God says to Joshua. And this is Joshua 1, verse 9. I command you, be strong and of good courage. Do not fear nor be dismayed, for I am the Lord your God, and I will be with you wherever you go. I think that's something that we need to remember, is that, as we embark into this new challenge that we're going to call SHTF or Teotwalki, or whatever we want to call this new environment, we've got to be strong and of good courage. We have to have faith that we're going to come through the other side. We have to find like-minded people that we can help and that they can help us, and I think that's it. We have to be a group. We have to be a tribe. We have to be a connected people. So remember that we're all, oh no, I have to do numbers. I forget. I put my Bible up, but we've got to do numbers. So now we're going to do Numbers chapter 6, verses 24, 25 to 26. And that says, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. So remember, we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. Thank you all so much for being here, for tolerating me and my exposés for the past hour. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful chats where you've shared such great advice and with each other, and the way you take care of each other. Thank you for being kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because that's what's going to take for us to get through the other side. So togetherness is the key, and thank you for showing that here with your fellow man. I appreciate it. You all have a wonderful evening. Don't forget, Thursday night, we're going to be doing our fiction book club, and we're going to be doing book 8 of A Americans Going Home series. So see you at 8 o'clock Thursday night. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.